When you're building a team that is contending for a championship, this has been one of the ways of doing it. Usually you have 1 or 2 of the top 10 players in the league, and you fill out the roster with role players that fit next to your best players. But it's not always easy getting certain players to sacrifice and to buy into the scheme. You have to have the right mix of guys or your team's chemistry won't be good. The 8 players in this video took on lesser roles so their teams could win a championship. I liked making this video. There's one quote and one statistic in here that I didn't even know about until I did research for it, so let me know what you think of this one. The first player of the video is Andre Iguodala. Before joining the Golden State Warriors, Iguodala never got out of the first round of the playoffs. In Philadelphia, he was the guy who led your team in shot attempts and minutes. And even in his one season on the Denver Nuggets in 2013, a team that had a lot of scoring options, Andre Iguodala was the second highest scorer for them in the playoffs, second in assists, and second in rebounds. He wasn't some super reliable isolation scorer, but you could give him the ball and have him make plays in the starting lineup. Now I know this video is about sacrificing personal success to win a ring, and Iguodala won a Finals MVP in 2015, which is personal success, but it's not like Iggy went out of his way to win that. After losing to the Warriors in the first round in 2013, he declined an extension with Denver that summer, and they traded him to Golden State. His first season with the Warriors, he saw a drop in stats, but it was really the second year with them where Iguodala took on a much smaller role than what he was used to. Just look over his per game numbers from the 2015 season, 8 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Those were all the lowest of his career. And even in the playoffs, his minutes per game, the lowest of his career. Shot attempts, the lowest of his career. Go on down the line, Iguodala's individual stats took a hit. This is pretty interesting about Iguodala's career. I didn't know this at the time. In his first 10 NBA seasons, he never came off the bench until the second year in Golden State. With the Warriors in 2015, Iguodala became a jack-of-all-trades six-man, whether that was guarding LeBron in single coverage in the NBA Finals, finding the open shooter or cutter after he catches a pass from a double-team Steph Curry, or finishing an alley-oop pass from Draymond. Iguodala did a lot for them. He was a starter for the first time that season during Game 4 of the NBA Finals over Andrew Bogut, and he scored 22 points and grabbed 8 rebounds. When the Warriors went down 2-1 to the Cavs in 2015, they were looking a little bit slow to start the games from an athleticism and shot creation standpoint, so Iguodala gave them a huge boost to win 3 straight games. It's not like you were going anywhere if Iguodala was your number 2 option in his 11th season, but he did take a lesser role off the bench that helped the Warriors dominate that entire season. The next guy I got on here is Ray Allen, and one of the more under-discussed parts of his career is how easy it was for him to make the move from star player that you run your offense through to high-level role player that can take a step back, do the small things, and at times pick up the slack if someone isn't shooting well. Here's a pretty crazy stat. When Ray Allen was on the Milwaukee Bucks and the Seattle Sonics between the years 1999 and 2006, his teams had 6 top 3 finishes in offensive rating, 6 of them. So if you had Ray Allen on your team during those years, you were going to have an elite offense. In the season before he was traded to the Boston Celtics, he averaged 26 points per game and was putting up 21 shots a night. 21 shots a game is a lot. That is star player level amount of attempts. But in his first year in Boston the next season, he dropped to 17 points per game and was only taking 13 shots a night. That is a huge drop off. Ray Allen was always amazing off the ball, so that transition came easy to him next to Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. He was getting his shots a little bit differently. He saw a huge jump in the amount of shots that were assisted on. He was no longer using a lot of his offensive possessions as an isolation scorer or a pick and roll ball handler. He was coming off screens more than usual, and it helped Boston win a championship. His move to a role player in just one season doesn't get talked about enough when going through history. That is not an easy thing to do. There was a moment of reckoning for the Miami Heat after they lost the NBA Finals to the Dallas Mavericks in 2011. Dwayne Wade knew he needed to make a change after that finals loss, and he made one of the more difficult choices of his basketball career. To win a championship, LeBron needed to dictate the flow and control the game on offense so he is comfortable. Wade went to LeBron directly about this to make it clear, you're running the offense, no more of this my turn, your turn stuff. Wade is on record saying, LeBron is probably the most talented player we've seen in a while, but how good can we be? Are we going to be good if me and him are both scoring 27 a night? Yeah, we're going to be good, but it would be too much. Okay, it's your turn. Now it's your turn. Wade also said, I wanted to give him the opportunity where he didn't have to think about that. It's kind of like I told him, listen, I'll find my way. Don't worry about me. I'll be there. but you go out and be the player that we want you to be. LeBron went on to win MVP that next year, and Wade's points per game dropped to 22, and since that second season, Wade was always the second option. It was also probably a good thing that Wade made sure that he was the number 2 option, because his knee injuries were getting really bad, but it takes a lot for a guy who was averaging 30 plus every night leading the team to handing over the keys to someone who you admitted was better than you. That takes a lot. Not a lot of guys who've been considered a top 3 player in the league are able to do it, and it works, and you win a championship. Meta World Peace, or Ron Artest at the time, was averaging 21 points and shooting 17 shots per game in his last year with the Sacramento Kings in 2008, and in his first and only year with the Houston Rockets in 2009, he was scoring 17 points per game. He wasn't that efficient, but he led the Rockets in shot attempts in the regular season and in the playoffs. The next year he signed with the Lakers, and naturally your shot attempts and your usage rating are going to take a massive hit, and he understood his new role. He's playing with Kobe, he's playing with Pau Gasol, he's not going to be one of the main guys anymore, he's going to shoot threes and play defense. This quote from Meta is pretty interesting because he's right. You don't really hear anyone talking about him going from a main offensive option to a straight up role player in one season. Back in 2015, Meta said, "I felt like I wasn't getting the credit that people should have gave me for sacrificing. Nobody ever really talked about that, so it was frustrating. I kind of went to China just to prove that I could score the ball. It's hard to adjust your mind to be a role player." That's pretty interesting. Meta went to another country just to get his shots up and prove he could still do stuff off the dribble. That's why team building at the contender level is kind of difficult, because you have to have the right mix of players or you'll have an underwhelming team. Kevin Love in his first 2 seasons with the Cleveland Cavaliers averaged 16 points and brought down 10 rebounds, which are pretty good numbers as a number 3 option with Kyrie Irving and LeBron James, but they weren't even as close to as good as his numbers with Minnesota. He was second team All-NBA, averaging 26 points per game, averaging 12 rebounds, and was the main option on a 40-win Minnesota Timberwolves team back in 2014. Kevin Love was one of the more dominant players in the post. But with the Cavs, he was more of an outside shooter. He did take a lot of threes in his last year with Minnesota, but a lot of the post-ups were cut out in Cleveland because he's playing with 2 perimeter players who dominate the ball. Kevin needed to open up the floor for Kyrie and LeBron. This was basically one of the first times in his NBA career where he was no longer the focal point of a team's offense, and he was taking a lot of heat because if his shot was off, he wasn't the most reliable defender, so at times he was pretty tough to watch. Here's something Kevin Love said during the 2018 playoffs. "I know that when we have success, I might not get the credit, and when we do lose or have a bad string of games, that I might get the blame, but that comes with the territory. Hopefully at the end of my career, they'll look and say, wow, Kevin did a lot for Cleveland and the city and brought a championship here, and hopefully multiple championships." It's not going to be multiple championships, but he did help bring one to Cleveland. I'll always remember that one play of him staying in front of Steph Curry in Game 7 of the 2016 Finals. No one sacrificed more on the Miami Heat than Chris Bosh. No one sacrificed more on the Miami Heat than Chris Bosh when he teamed up with LeBron and D Wade back in 2010. He went from the best player on an average Toronto Raptors team, averaging 24 points per game in 2010, to 16 points per game in 2014 with the Miami Heat. This Bosh quote I'm about to put on the screen, I really like this one because he's talking about the thoughts going on in your head when you're taking on a lesser role for the better of the team. Everybody says they want to win, but when you start talking about sacrifice and doing what's right for the team, it's like, wait a minute, I didn't mean that. I want to win, but there's always a conjunction with that. It's never what you think it is, and it's always like your weakest point where you got to do it. I like this one because Bosh knew, even before he played a minute with 2 top 3 players in the league, he knew he was going to get less shots, he knew he was going to get less touches, but when you're actually in the games, in the season, you're saying, oh, this is a lot tougher than what I imagined, because the few shots you do get, there's more pressure to make them, and on the other side of the court, Bosh is playing an aggressive trapping style of defense that other big men in the league aren't doing. It feels like Bosh's positional sacrifice got lost in history. Not that Chris Bosh is the only really good player that gets sort of lost in history, a lot of players do, but I feel like Draymond Green got most of the credit that Bosh was going to get, if not for the blood clots that ended his career. Not that I'm against Draymond, I like Draymond a lot, and he's really influential for today's NBA. It's just that Miami would have been a lot better with Bosh doing his unique things at center into his mid-30s. He would be getting more credit for what the center position is today. Bosh was sort of like a test dummy for today's three-point shooting and perimeter defending big men. It's unfortunate that his health robbed the last arc of his career. For the last two players in this video, I'm going to have them in the same part because I feel like they're pretty similar as the mastermind of their teams, Tim Duncan and Steph Curry. David West has a really good quote about Steph's first year with KD. He went on a podcast recently and said, "There were nights where I told Steph that first year, like, F these guys, you gotta go. He was trying too hard to make everybody comfortable. He knows Klay wants to score, shoot the ball. That's who Klay Thompson is. He knows that Draymond likes to have the ball in his hands so Dre can make plays. KD needs his time." Now, the shot attempts and usage don't exactly tell the full story, but Steph definitely made it a lot easier for Klay, Draymond, and KD to make sure they're comfortable. This is a guy in the middle of his prime, and he easily could have won another MVP if not for Kevin Durant joining the team. You can just run high pick and roll all day long with Steph, win 60 games, but Steph is so bought in as the leader of the team and Steve Kerr's offense. You can say the same exact thing for Tim Duncan. Greg Popovich might be the best coach of all time, but he only gets away with this type of equal opportunity offensive scheme if you have someone with the mindset of Tim Duncan. That success doesn't happen without full buy-in from Duncan. He basically agreed to sacrifice fame and personal accolades for the greater good of building a team that is competitive year in and year out. Duncan was so dominant as a post player, he could have been the focal point of a team and everyone plays off of him, but with the Spurs, he's playing off of other guys and letting them get their shots. In the year 2012, he cut his salary from $21 million to $10 million to allow the Spurs to keep their depth, and he also took another pay cut in 2015. I wouldn't even say Duncan changed his play style or anything, but he could have easily asked for a bigger role. And that's it for me. These are 8 players that said, I need to do something a little bit different so we as a team can win a championship. Appreciate it if you made it to the end of this one. Let me know how you're feeling about it down in the comments. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like as it does help the channel do better, and consider subscribing if you want to see more from me.